I have the weirdest life, I really do. Once again, I find myself in the middle of a brouhaha as I appear to have run afoul of probably the worst woman in American politics, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court, which is lovely, a lovely thing to say. So I made a joke. I said, where is Will Smith when you need him? What she does instead of working, she tweets. After she saw it, she tweeted, ABC contacts my employer. This threat of violence against me by Jimmy Kimmel has been filed with the Capitol Police.
Marjorie Taylor Greene called him out, claimed his joke was a threat of violence, and even got the Capitol Police involved. Jimmy Kimmel's response? Pure comedic gold. Wait until you hear how he turned this into the internet's favorite punchline. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't exactly known for playing it safe with her words. From the infamous Jewish space lasers theory to a moment where she confused cold soup for some secret police force, calling it the Gaspacho Police. Greene has carved out a reputation for pushing the boundaries of outrageousness. She's like the person in a group project who keeps suggesting ideas that make everyone else pretend they didn't hear anything. But this time, she didn't just make headlines for what she said. She made headlines for the way she overreacted when the joke was on her. So here's what went down. Jimmy Kimmel made a joke.
No.
Let's go to the videotape as well.
No, well, and then they did. Of course she quoted Independence Day. To her, that's a history book. That's a... Which is like saying, I would have been at the wedding. I was too busy burning down the church. She very conveniently failed to recall a great deal of what she said, but fear not, because Big Pharma is hard at work to make sure she never forgets the things she didn't actually forget. When Marjorie was asked if she considered participating in the riot herself, she said it was on her calendar, but she was too busy preparing her case against the Electoral College vote totals to go.
That's it. A late-night comedian who literally gets paid to roast public figures did his job, and Greene, who screams free speech at every opportunity, lost it. But instead of hitting back with a witty retort, she went full-on hall monitor and reported him to the Capitol Police. That's right, a grown adult calling the authorities over a punchline. Yet the second someone aims a zinger her way, she suddenly transforms from a firebrand into a fragile, pearl-clutching victim. It's like a boxer stepping into the ring, swinging at their opponent, and then bawling when they get hit back. You can almost hear Kimmel laughing as the news broke, not because it was shocking, but because Greene made it so easy for him to turn this into comedy gold. Greene's history of inflammatory comments adds even more context to this ridiculous overreaction.
This threat of violence against me by Jimmy Kimmel has been filed with the Capitol Police. By the way, if she's gonna report me to the police, if that's how she wants to play it, I'll report you right back. And I won't go to the police, I'll go to the Justice League, okay? Dear, I'm writing about a woman who might be a supervillain. Like the Joker, she thinks she is funny. And like the Penguin, she is 5 foot. Do you know what a vomit you have to be to get called out by Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Remember when she suggested that wildfires in California might be caused by lasers controlled by a Jewish banking family? Not only did this ignite widespread ridicule, but it also showed her tendency to dive headfirst into conspiracy theory land. Then there was her infamous soup mix-up where she confused gazpacho with Gestapo. For someone who loves to throw out big accusations, you'd think she'd take a little more care with her words. But instead, her gaffes have become punchlines that comedians like Kimmel can't resist. The difference here is that Kimmel didn't have to work too hard to make Greene look foolish. She did it all by herself. But let's talk about the joke itself, because that's where Greene's reaction really crumbles under scrutiny. Kimmel cracked a line that could have been brushed off, ignored, or twisted into a comeback if Greene had any sense of wit. Instead, she doubled down on outrage, acting as though the joke was some sort of personal attack. If leaving voicemails for the Capitol Police was meant to make her look serious and strong, it failed miserably. All it did was make her look like a politician who could dish it out but couldn't take it, a reputation-damaging image that Kimmel certainly wasn't going to let slip by. Now, let's address the playground analogy, because it's just too fitting to ignore. What sets this incident apart is the sheer absurdity of treating a joke as a serious threat. It amplifies a pattern we've seen before. Greene putting herself in the spotlight only to flinch when the heat gets too intense. It's a cycle she seems unable or unwilling to break. By the time Kimmel got wind of Greene's reaction, he must have been smiling. For a comedian, what could be better than someone so determined to be outraged that they hand-deliver material for your next monologue? This is where Greene miscalculated. If the goal was to make Kimmel look bad, she failed spectacularly. All she did was set herself up to become the joke, and Kimmel wasted no time seizing the moment. Which brings us to the next act in this ongoing saga, Kimmel's response. His response? A simple tweet that read, "Officer, I'd like to report a joke." It was short, snarky, and right to the point. Kimmel wasn't backing down, and with those few words, he deflated the absurdity of Greene's reaction almost instantly. It was as if he knew she had handed him the easiest setup to a joke in years, and he wasn't about to let it go to waste. But it wasn't just Kimmel's new nicknames for Greene that left people laughing. During his segment, he took the time to remind the audience exactly who they were dealing with. He brought up Greene's Jewish space lasers conspiracy theory, a statement so bizarre it sounded more like the plot of a bad sci-fi movie than something a sitting politician would seriously say. And he didn't let the gazpacho police slip go unmentioned either. Kimmel masterfully tied these moments to her current behavior, pointing out that someone who had said such outlandish things shouldn't be so quick to call the cops over a comedian making a joke. He didn't need to invent anything or reach for his material. It was all already there, out in the open, thanks to her past statements. All Kimmel had to do was connect the dots, and the punchlines practically wrote themselves. One of Kimmel's sharpest observations came in the way he contrasted Greene's love of inflammatory rhetoric with her fragile reaction to being on the receiving end of a joke. For years, she had built a reputation on bold, controversial statements, often laced with conspiracy theories and veiled or not so veiled insults. Yet when Kimmel so much as hinted at poking fun at her, it suddenly became a matter of national security. It wasn't just a double standard, it was comedy gold, and Kimmel made sure to shine a light squarely on that contradiction. It left viewers with a clear and hilarious takeaway. Greene had no problem dishing it out, but she couldn't handle even the mildest form of pushback. And then came the moment that cemented Kimmel's comedic win in the feud, the infamous Batman letter. For anyone who doesn't know, this wasn't just a handwritten note. It was styled like something out of a superhero comic, complete with taunting phrases that played up the absurdity of Greene's reaction. It was the kind of mocking humor that you might expect from a middle school class clown, but somehow it worked perfectly and struck exactly the right tone. The letter was short, sharp, and ridiculous in just the right proportion to match the ridiculousness of involving law enforcement over a late-night joke. The Batman letter took on a life of its own. It went viral almost immediately, with people posting and reposting screenshots of it alongside memes about Greene's overreaction. What made it so effective wasn't just that it was funny, it was the way it captured how absurd the situation had become. By turning Greene's outrage into something so clearly over the top, Kimmel effectively stripped away any pretense of seriousness from her complaint. He didn't just win the comedic battle, he turned the entire thing into a defining moment in their feud, a moment that would make it nearly impossible for anyone to take Greene's claims seriously. What made Kimmel's takedown even more powerful was his ability to tap into a broader frustration with Greene. For months, years even, she had been a controversial figure, known for her combative style and her readiness to offend, but turning that same energy into feigned outrage when the tables were turned felt so disingenuous that it created a perfect storm for ridicule. Kimmel didn't need to convince people of this contradiction, he only needed to shine a spotlight on it. The result was a communal laugh at Greene's expense, with Kimmel acting as the ringleader of this impromptu comedy show. Through it all, Kimmel managed to do what comedians do best, take something exaggerated and make it relatable and funny. His jokes worked not because they were mean-spirited, but because they were rooted in reality. Greene had given him all the material he needed, and Kimmel simply connected the dots with humor. His approach wasn't about silencing her or canceling her, it was about exposing the irony and hypocrisy of her actions. And let's be honest, that's exactly why his jokes resonated with people. As the Batman letter made its rounds online, it became became clear that this feud wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a moment that had cemented Greene as a permanent punchline in Kimmel's repertoire. And it wasn't just Kimmel who had the last laugh. By the time the internet latched onto the story, it was clear that Greene's attempt to play the victim had backfired spectacularly. The next phase of this saga was already underway, as memes and viral posts began flooding social media, making sure that Greene's overreaction would remain the internet's favorite joke for weeks to come. If Marjorie Taylor Greene thought filing a police report over a joke was going to silence her critics or even salvage her image, she clearly didn't account for the internet. What began as Jimmy Kimmel's mockery of her quickly grew into a full-blown online phenomenon, with memes, tweets, and viral posts turning Greene into the butt of worldwide comedy. And at the center of it all was Kimmel's Batman letter, a tongue-in-cheek note styled like something straight out of a comic book villain's playbook. It was the spark that set the internet's creativity ablaze, creating a wave of ridicule that Greene could do nothing to stop. The internet wasted no time taking Kimmel's handiwork and amplifying it tenfold. Within hours of the letter making its way onto social media, a flood of memes began to circulate, each more ridiculous than the last. One particularly popular meme featured a photo of Greene with the caption, "I wasn't upset about Jewish space lasers, but a comedy monologue? That's where I draw the line." It was a perfect comedic takedown of her selective outrage, standing as a kind of digital mic drop moment. Another viral image showed Greene photoshopped into a grocery store soup aisle, standing in front of cans labeled Gaspacho Registry, with Kimmel's name circled in bright red like an FBI suspect. The humor was simple, direct, and devastatingly effective. Greene's biggest critics couldn't have written a better punchline. While the memes piled up, Twitter turned into an arena of endless commentary. Users who didn't even usually follow politics started jumping into the fray, sharing their takes on the spectacle. Some focused on Greene's absurd overreaction, likening her to a parody of herself, while others simply shared the Batman letter with captions like "Best Roast of the Year." The speed at which the story spread and the creativity it inspired was a masterclass in how the internet can take a singular event and transform it into something iconic. People weren't just laughing at Greene's overreaction, they were making her the centerpiece of a cultural moment. Of course, part of what made this all so entertaining was the sheer irony of it. Here was a politician who had built her public brand on outlandish statements and defiant rhetoric about freedom of speech. Yet, the minute a late-night comedian made her the target of a harmless joke, she crumbled and tried to call in the authorities like a flustered principal dealing with rowdy kids. Social media users seized on the contradiction immediately, with one viral tweet pointing out, "She talks a lot about cancel culture, but she just tried to cancel Kimmel with a 911 call." Statements like these highlight a key point. Greene didn't just lose control of the narrative, she accidentally handed it to her critics, who then dismantled it piece by piece, turning her own outrage back against her. What's fascinating about the internet's role in this story is how it amplifies moments like these into something much bigger than they originally were. Kimmel's jokes and the Batman letter were already hilarious on their own, but online platforms have a way of extending the life of these moments, amplifying them with sheer numbers. The irony here couldn't be sharper. Greene, in trying to draw attention to what she saw as an act of violence against her, actually ensured that even more eyeballs would be on Kimmel's joke. If she had ignored it, the joke might have stayed a late-night one-liner and fizzled out in a day. Instead, it grew into a full-blown internet event with enough memes and posts to ensure it didn't just fade away. This is something public figures, especially controversial ones like Greene, often misunderstand about the online world today. Once the internet latches onto something, it's nearly impossible to stop it. The more you try to fight back, the more traction the jokes and memes gain. By involving the Capitol Police and tweeting about how offended she was, Greene effectively doubled down on her role as the punchline, guaranteeing that the internet would keep laughing at her expense. Humor has a way of cutting through even the most carefully crafted public personas, and Greene's image, already riddled with controversy, didn't stand a chance. Kimmel, on the other hand, didn't even need to put in much additional effort. The internet was doing the heavy lifting for him. As tweets and memes piled up, Kimmel simply enjoyed the moment, likely watching in real time, as Greene's attempt to control the narrative spiraled further out of her hands. By the time the dust settled, it was clear who had come out on top. Kimmel's jokes were now a permanent part of the digital landscape, cemented in online culture where they'd continue to circulate indefinitely. Greene, meanwhile, had solidified her place as a symbol of overreaction, a modern-day parody of the very outraged culture she often bemoaned. The social media frenzy surrounding this feud serves as a perfect reminder of just how much power the internet wields when it comes to public perception. Once something goes viral, it has a way of taking on a life of its own, evolving and growing until the original person or event is completely overshadowed by the internet's collective creativity. Greene found this out the hard way. Instead of silencing her critics, she handed them a megaphone, and the laughs just kept getting louder. Kimmel's humor remained sharp and relentless, but it was the internet's ability to immortalize the moment that turned this feud into a full-scale cultural comedy. For Greene, the real fallout here wasn't just the embarrassment, it was her complete inability to regain control of the story. Every joke, every tweet, and every meme still floating around online is a reminder that trying to police humor rarely works out. In fact, it usually backfires, turning the situation into an even bigger spectacle than it ever would have been otherwise. And as long as Greene stays in the spotlight, the internet will be waiting, ready to turn the next misstep into another viral punchline. Marjorie Taylor Greene's move to involve the Capitol Police over Jimmy Kimmel's joke did more harm to her than good. Instead of silencing the comedian, she gave him prime material to expose her weaknesses. The absurdity of her overreaction highlighted the very hypocrisy she's been criticized for. Outspoken and controversial one moment, thin-skinned the next. Comedy thrives in these contradictions, and Kimmel's sharp wit turned her outrage into a defining failure. Here's the real punchline: trying to censor humor often backfires, and this feud is proof. If nothing else, it's a reminder. Sometimes the smartest move is just to laugh along.